There was nothing out of the ordinary about the moment. In Prague, Amber Glenn emerged from the ice with a smile on her face despite breathing more heavily than usual. Not a broad smile, not the kind that conveys that things went smoothly, just enough to give a control signal. And you'd probably assume that's all it was if you were just casually observing. Another stride ahead, a strong skate, a favorable position. However, that isn't actually what took place. Because figure skating is not what it appears to be on the surface. Yes, on paper. The program was successful. She tried the triple axel. She already stands apart from the majority of the field because of that. It's not just another leap, it's dangerous. A declaration. And she went for it on March 25th inside Prague's O2 Arena. The landing wasn't flawless. On the edge, there was a small altercation. The blade didn't settle completely for a time. However, she remained upright. And that's more important than a clean departure in a field where many wouldn't even try. You could feel the shift in the arena right there. Just recognition, nothing loud or explosive. The combination then appeared, powerful and in control. The type of element that just works without drawing attention to itself. Without a doubt, without hesitation. Additionally, the program felt steady for a short while. However, if you followed her for a sufficient amount of time, you are aware of where your focus will move next. The triple loop is where it always ends. She used the same element, timing, and entry strategy during the Olympic short program in Milan a few weeks prior, the one that didn't proceed as planned. Such moments never go away. They are seated in the backdrop, silent, but in the present. And it reappears when you confront the same edge once more, under duress, in a different setting, but with the same stakes. She swiftly set it up, perhaps more quickly than is necessary. Before launch, there's always that split second, the moment at which everything either holds or doesn't. It held this time. Tidy landing. No obvious adjustment. Strong departure. And that's when something changed. Not in a big way. Not in a way that causes the program to stop. But enough for you to notice it. A tiny release. It was almost as if relief attempted to emerge. However, she kept it to herself, as she was unable to. The program was not finished. She remained inside the sequence and handled the last parts with poise. Don't overreact. No additional feeling. But now that you understood what that jump represented, you were observing in a different way. The audience wasn't responding to perfection by the time she struck her last posture. They were responding to the situation. She'd done enough. After skating off, she sat down and observed the scoreboard. 72. 65 third. Directly behind two of the world's strongest skaters. Right before another American. It is not survival. That's the position. Everything seemed to line up for a second, as if she had changed Milan's story, as if things were finally progressing. Above all, she appeared normal. That's the important detail, because that was completely at odds with what transpired subsequently. Nothing particularly caught my attention at first. After a skate like that, Amber went through everything like athletes typically do. The weeping and kiss, a brief conversation with her coaches. Some words are picked up by cameras while others are not. That scene is familiar to you. A nod, a tiny grin. Perhaps it was better to keep silent or you battled for it. Nothing out of the ordinary. She appeared lighter, if anything. She was less anxious than she had been before walking onto the ice, but she wasn't overtly relieved. It seemed as if something had finally come loose. Perhaps it had, because it took more than just technical skill to land that loop following what transpired in Milan. It was intimate. This is the bit that most people overlook, though. After the program concludes, what happens? Because things become less controlled after the scores are announced and the cameras move on to the next skater. She got up, straightened her jacket, and moved away from the boards. Still calm, still wearing that face of neutrality. No indication of annoyance, no discernible emotional release. Just be constant. And everything went as planned for a short while, till the mixed zone was reached. It's a small hallway. Reporters were standing closer than normal, not a stage, no separation. There, questions come in more quickly, and occasionally with less screening. Tone shifts. Even if you're not inside it, you can sense it. It was routine at first. Regarding the triple axel, they inquired about the danger. Concerning the landing, she responded coolly, without hesitation. Even smiled briefly in reference to the altercation on the landing. The loop then appeared. Milan was specifically named. Not violently, just making reference to it. She admitted it. In short, under control. It's still okay. Even so, it's exactly what you would anticipate from someone who recently performed well under duress. Then, though something changed, it wasn't really loud. No disruption occurred. There was no overt tension in the space. Just one query. perhaps it wasn't even a question. Sometimes it's the way it's presented. A mention of the rankings. A reference to the score's closeness. Next, another name. A competitor. Introduced into the discussion in a manner that seemed natural, almost informal. However, nothing is casual at this time, because there was more to it than just who was in front or behind. It has to do with anticipation about her intended location and the security of that position. It was visible to you, not right away, not in an eye-catching manner. However, it was present. Her posture stiffened a little. She changed her hold on the microphone. Eyes shifted for a moment, then returned. After that, she responded, expert, measured. There was no obvious annoyance, just not as long, less accessible. If you were paying close attention, you would notice that the tone had slightly decreased. After that, she went on. Next query, next response, as if nothing had occurred. However, something had, because that change persisted by the time she arrived at the major press conference. It was also more difficult to conceal this time. Something had changed by the time she took a seat at the press conference table. Not enough for everyone to take attention, but enough that it no longer felt the same. The microphone was adjusted by her. For a moment, I glanced to the side of the room, then moved forward once more. Standard configuration. The media is on one side and athletes are on the other. Cameras have been fixed. Lights remain steady. Everything went just as planned. However, there was a little discrepancy. You begin to notice it if you've seen enough of these instances. It's not always about words. At times, it's about what remains beneath. The questioning started off as usual. Points. Execution. The triple axel. Someone inquired about her feelings regarding loop, citing Milan once more. She was still being followed by that moment. She gave a good response. Brief. Under control. Without hesitation. Finally, a little nod, still calm, keeping everything in place. Then there was another query, and at first, this one didn't sound any different. The standings were mentioned how near everything was. The difference between third and fourth is only a fraction of a point. Then someone else's name came up. A competitor. Not presented as a dispute. Not presented as a critique. Just a comparison. The kind that seems innocuous. The type that is ideal for sports analysis. However, it doesn't always land that way in a room like this following a performance like that, because placement wasn't the only factor. It has to do with anticipation, about her current position, as well as where she could fall. Furthermore, the thought does not simply vanish once it is presented to you. It was visible to you, not in a big way, not in a way that detracts from the occasion, but in little details. Her gaze lingered a little longer before responding. Her voice was a little quieter than previously, just enough for you to notice it if you were paying attention. She answered, remained courteous. Didn't contest the idea. However, there was a problem with that exchange. It becomes challenging to characterize at this point, because nothing that was said was obviously incorrect. Nobody went over the cue. Direct tension did not exist. No conflict. It might appear as a typical query if you put it in writing. However, such moments are rarely captured on paper. They have an impact on how they land, and occasionally what they make you think of. She swiftly answered the rest of the questions. Didn't grow much. Didn't stay. Simply responded and went on. After that, it was over. Officially, at least. Because the portion that most people don't expect started to show as she stood up and the microphones were turned away. It was quick. A short distance from the table. A moment of silence. Not really dramatic. Nothing was staged. Just enough room for something to come to the top. And it didn't remain contained this time. It didn't take place in front of the cameras. Not while responding to questions. Not with all the cameras focused on her. It took place shortly after, a few paces off to the side and away from the table, the type of location that is not completely framed yet is nonetheless recorded. She came to a halt. It appeared to be nothing at first. Perhaps she was fiddling with her jacket. Perhaps simply inhaling. After a press conference, there is frequently a lull of that nature. However, this one was a bit longer. Just enough to make you feel different. She lowered her head a little. A single hand was raised. It was instinctive, not quickly theatrical. At that point, it became evident she was no longer answering. She was attempting to suppress something. It's not usually in sports, but you've seen that moment before. Occasionally in ordinary circumstances. When a person appears calm on the surface but is already changed on the inside. And in this case, timing was crucial. Since this wasn't the result of an error, she remained upright. She was present for the program. She had just finished third in a global competition. This doesn't typically occur there. It felt different because of this. During the performance, a certain kind of pressure doesn't manifest. It appears later, as the pace slows down. When you cease to move. When there is at last room to reflect on what has just transpired. And what will happen next. And that area wasn't empty for her. It was fresh memories. Milan. That brief program. That one jump that didn't go as planned. It doesn't simply go away now, even when you fix it. It remains near. The present comes next. The rankings. 72. 65. Third position. Not safe, yet just where you want to be. Because there was another American directly behind him, 72. 16. Eternal margin. What it signifies is also the same. After just one spotless free skate, everything is different. After one error, everything changes once more. And then there's what was stated only minutes before. Not confrontational, not forthright, but enough. Enough to remain in your mind. Such moments don't have to be past. They don't have to be clear. All they have to do is now. They follow you when they've done so. Her respiration shifted. You could see it. Her concentration wavered for a moment longer than it had before. She halted. Oh, for no apparent reason. Then, almost as fast as it had appeared, she pushed it back, stood up straight, inhaled, and moved forward once more. Composed. Expert. Not quite the same, but exactly what you would anticipate. And sometimes everything begins with that tiny distinction. Such moments don't simply go, even in the absence of organized events, because everything still appears to be in its proper place when you look at the standings. You and Amber, third position, solid position, directly within the last group. In the free skate, that's exactly where any skater wants to be. It's perfect on paper. However, contests such as this are not decided by paper. What is carried over is decided, in the portion that isn't visible on the scoreboard. The scenario appears straightforward going into Friday. Ahead of her are two Japanese skaters. Both are reliable. They both had experience. They are both accustomed to this degree of strain. Another American was right behind her. It's close enough that a single tiny error can alter everything. That is the structure that is apparent. However, something else is already taking shape beneath it. Because there is more to this than just points. It has to do with timing. The weight of post-Olympic worlds is usually different. A few athletes come here with the intention of closing a chapter. Others show up in an attempt to remedy one. Amber Glenn is simultaneously doing both, and that in and of itself is